Alright, you spear-loving bastards, here is Tempest mod. This mod has been designed primarily with spears in mind. It can be also used with most of other weapon types. Skills will scale based on the attribute of the weapon. So if it's staff, it's gonna be intelligence. If it's strength-based weapon, like hammer, it's gonna be strength. This mod has got two options. One is piercing weapon skills. The other one is not piercing weapon skills. Considering that piercing skills are really rare in the game and this whole mod is based on that, I'm going to show you how that works. It's quite overpowered. It's too overpowered and I think it should be toned down, which you will see in a second why I think that. Piercing damage doesn't scale with anything. The only way to increase the damage from these skills is through attribute of the weapon that you're wielding. In this case I'm wielding a spear, so it's a finesse. And with your basic attack stat. That's the attack of your weapon, and it's also displayed here. It can be built in many ways and combined with other abilities and trees and whatever. I've now combined it with polymorph because of the skin graft so that we can get the reset. But I'm going to talk about the build later on. First I'm going to show you what this is all about. Typical stuff, paladin bridge as always. These paladin bastards are being bullied again on a regular basis. And it's time to show you what this can do. So remember, piercing damage ignores physical and magical armor. This is lone wolf mode. I'm going to try to show you all the abilities. First, I'm going to show you the ultimate one, Spearfall. It's probably the most overpowered ability in game. You'll see why I think that in a second. So let's start with something like Necrotic Strike. It does piercing damage and causes atrophy. You can see the atrophy was applied even though we did not remove physical armor from the target. So it means that the status effects of these skills are also piercing. If I would do a normal attack now, I would damage his physical armor. But I don't want to do normal attacks, I just want to do this piercing attack. So we're gonna do a jab. It's a basic single target skill. I'm gonna boost my physical armor just in case. Now I have a lot of options, but I want these enemies to come together so that I can use Spearfall, and you'll see what I mean by bloody overpowered. Now look at this. Spearfall, first look at the range of this bloody attack. It's ridiculous. And now you're gonna see even more ridiculous things, like the damage of it. So with this build, which is really nothing special because it's all piercing damage, we've just killed everyone with one shot. Obviously this is not the point of this showcase. I want to showcase you guys the rest of the skills. So I'm going to reload the game and do it again, but without this ability. Let's now do this fight without using Spearfall. We're going to use every other ability available to us. Like for example Necrotic Strike. Sets atrophy on these bastards. I want to get rid of these defenders as soon as possible. And that's the idea, so that I don't get taunted, and I'll deal with the rest later. So this guy is done. If I use Celestial Spear, I can jump amongst enemies and get Tick of the Fight bonus. Currently I only have one person that I'm gonna jump to, so I'm only gonna get 10% increase. Although I did test this out and the increase was also 10% when I jumped amongst 3 enemies that were really close together. So I don't know how that scales, maybe that's a bug or something. Either way, we're gonna use some other abilities like Frenzied Strike. And we immediately killed the defender. So defenders have been dealt with. Want to show you the rest of the skills now. We have Sweeping Slash that hits target in an arc in front of us. We have Piercing Thrust that goes through enemies. I want to properly use that, if I can align enemies properly with it. And we have Wicked Spiral. It covers enemies in fear when we strike them. Let's use Chaotic Strikes. So it added what? It added fire and water damage. So it's actually added water damage, I believe. Because my spear is fire damage, yeah. That's cool. So it stacks on other types of damage. Now that they are all bunched up together, we can use something like Wicked Spiral. That would annihilate a lot of them. I did miss some of them with it. Piercing Thrust. Now we can use that to hit these two enemies. Oh wow, this is extremely powerful. Damage is insane. Especially when we add Chaotic Strikes next to that. There is also Sweeping Slash. This is the reason why I implemented Polymorph into the build. Now I can use Skin Graft, refresh all the skills. Maybe I should have used Jab before everything, but that's alright. Now I'm gonna use Celestial Spear once again. I cannot. I'm crippled. So we're gonna ignore that. Might as well use Piercing Thrust. It does insane damage. Absolutely insane. I still got Chaotic Strikes, but it did not add anything. It only did piercing damage. So it doesn't seem like Chaotic Strikes can add different random damage to the skills. Skills are still piercing and they are staying like that. That is essentially the Tempest mode. They really need to tone it down a bit because it's ridiculously overpowered. But it can be definitely fun. It's a great idea in general to use piercing damage for spears. It makes them kinda unique and it makes them efficient as hell. One skill I forgot to show you is Deflective Stance. Basically you reflect projectiles back at your target. Something like Deflective Barrier with Shield. Skills can be bought on any warfare vendor. For example, Gareth in Arcs.
How can I help?
Here they are. And that's it. Now we can talk about the build.
Go with honor.
As for the build, you can choose your weapon. As I said, these skills will scale based on your weapon attribute. Every skill except Celestial Spear. Celestial Spear, it seems like it scales from strength only. Doesn't matter what type of weapon you equip. Chaotic Strikes just gives random bonus damage to your weapon, so you cannot really play for that. The best version of this build would be if we combine polymorph skills. Now your normal attacks with any weapon that you're using will still do that weapon's normal damage. So it means it's going to be either physical or magical, depending on the weapon that you're wielding. These things do piercing damage, which is completely different. Piercing damage doesn't scale with anything. It doesn't scale with warfare. So the only way to increase the damage from these abilities is by using good enough weapon that has high enough basic attack, and also if we put a lot of points into our damage attribute. In this case, it's finesse, because we are using spear. If you were using something else like staff, then obviously that would be intelligence. If you were using something strength based, then obviously you would put points into strength. The rest of the points obviously goes into wits. Skin graft is essential here, that way you can reset all of these skills. And trust me, you won't need another reset after you've already done it once. because everyone will be dead. This is what I did for combat abilities. I'm gonna explain later what to do in early game. 3 points into warfare is enough. 3 points in warfare are needed so that you can get all the necessary skills. 1 point into scoundrel is also a necessity. Because you can see it requires warfare 3, requires scoundrel 1. That goes for most of these skills. Polymorph is the thing that I focused the most besides two-handed. Two-handed needs to be maxed out. From mid-game to end-game, it's the most important stat here. It will directly affect your critical multiplier and the damage that you do with, well, you're probably gonna play with the spear, so let's say with spear. Polymorph will give you 1 free attribute point per point invested into it. So that is extremely useful to get that critical chance up. Currently I have 7 polymorphs, so I put 7 additional points into it. That's 7% more crit chance. That's not a small number. And we also raise our initiative with it. That would be my build. Two-handed at max, 3 points into warfare, 1 point into scoundrel, the rest of it into polymorph. I've used only these couple of skills from Polymorph tree, like Chameleon Cloak, Skin Graft, Tentacle Lash and Heart of Steel. It would be good if you would add Spread Your Wings as well to the mix, so that you have more mobility. And that's about it. As for the gear, obviously focus on getting Wits and Finesse from it if you're using Spear. I mean, I don't need to explain this stuff to you anymore. You guys pretty much understand how that works now. From the talents, the ones that are important are Executioner, Hothead and Opportunist. Others are completely optional. I went with Bigger and Better and all skilled up so that I can put 1 more point into Polymorph, which gives me 1 free attribute point and plus 2 more attribute points from Bigger and Better talent. Now I have 3 more points to invest into attributes, and all 3 of these I put into Wits. Other than that, really it's up to you. I don't see anything here that would be a must, a necessity. If you want, you can combine Glass Cannon and Stench as well. That would be a good choice. But remember, you're at front lines, so it's hard to avoid crowd control effects. Stench is better used on ranged characters. That's it for the build. As for the early game, which is Forge on Hollow Marshes up until you get to Skin Graft. Skin Graft can be already obtained in Driftwood, depends on your level really. But up until you get to that point, in Forge on Hollow Marshes, I would put most of my points obviously into damage attribute. And put most of my points into warfare through Hollow Marshes and Fort Joy, simply because you won't have these skills at your disposal. Some of these skills can only be learned later on in the game. Vendors won't have all of them immediately, since you don't pass the requirement to learn these higher level skills. Another issue is that when you use all of these skills, you're stuck with auto attacks, and your auto attacks get buffed with warfare. And that's why I would focus warfare through Forge on Hollow Marshes up until we get to Skin Graft. When you get to Skin Graft, you can refresh all of these used abilities and everything will die in 2 turns, so you're good to go there. One more thing that you can implement that would be really good for this build is Adrenaline skill that goes from Scoundrel, that gives you 2 action points per turn, but then takes away 2 action points from the next turn. Two-handed can be completely ignored during Forge on Hollow Marshes. Just focus on warfare, it's going to give you more out of your auto attacks, and 1 point into Scoundrel is a must. If you want, start adding polymorph abilities during Forge on Hollow Marshes, completely up to you. But that's it really, that's the whole build. As for the early talents, Executioner is good, Opportunist is good. And from level 2 onward, Bigger and Better and all skilled up are also good. There are also 2 optional mods. One that will make auto attacks from spear piercing, which I would really suggest that you get it. It would definitely be better if you have all the piercing attacks, so that you don't need to do different stuff just to make your auto attacks more useful. that way. If you play with this mod, then I would, through Fort Joy and Hollow Marshes, put 3 points into Warfare, 1 point into Scoundrel, the rest Polymorph. Because the only thing that really matters is Finesse in that case. There's also another optional mod that completely changes the damage from these skills. It's not piercing damage anymore, but it's damage based off your weapon, physical or elemental. If that's the case, if you're playing with that mod, then what you should do depends on what type of weapon you're wielding. If you're wielding a spear, then Warfare will be your focus throughout the game, and then two-handed. Forget about Polymorph, maybe you can add a couple of points into it if you want, but Warfare should be your priority in that case. If you're using Staff that does elemental damage, well, obviously then you're going to, next to 3 points in Warfare and 1 in Scoundrel, put most of the points into one of these spell schools that will increase the elemental damage that your staff is doing. So if you're doing fire damage, then obviously pyrokinetic will be the tree that you need. If you're doing hydro damage with your staff, then hydro is the tree that you need. Two-handed in that case is also a very good option, because it will directly increase the damage that you do with your staff. There you go, these are all the variations. I believe everything is clear. If you have any more questions, please post in comments. It's a great mod that needs to be nerfed slightly, and that would make for a really fun playthrough. Thank you all for watching. Special thanks to my patrons. Don't forget to check out the description, please. There's a link to this mod. And see you all soon, you bastards.
Toodaloo, motherfucker.